10:30. I'll remind members that anything we say will be recorded and available for public listening. First of all, can we have the SEDERUNT apologies, please?
Thank you, Chairman. We've got 7 members present this morning. 2 apologies from Councillors Charteris and McGregor. 2 members currently not present, Councillors Lever and Wood.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to welcome the new Chief Exec of the Crichton Trust, William Gibbons, to his first meeting of the Crichton Sub Committee. Welcome, and on behalf of the subcommittee, may I wish you every success in your new post. I hope you'll find these subcommittees interesting and hopefully helpful in any future things that the Crichton actually wishes to do. And again, welcome Ian for coming along and supporting. Are there any declarations of interest? I'd just like to say that my name is in the second report, but it was, as you will remember, at the last subcommittee, I did ask Alex if it was possible to have the Veterans Garden moved up to the Crichton because the Carm Sally Garden was up for sale, and I'm pleased to say that the Veterans Garden has now been moved up there, and we have a licence to actually have the veterans there, and things are moving along, I think, relatively well. And we'll probably hear a bit more about that later on in the reports. But my interest is such I don't need to leave the room, or else you'd have to get another chairman to take the thing. Okay, has there any other members got any other declarations of interest? No. Thank you. We'll then move on to item number 3, which is the Crichton Trust Draft 2016 Management Accounts 2017 to 18 and Loan Facility. This report provides members with an oversight of the Trust draft management accounts for 2017-18 prior to these accounts being audited. The accounts are detailed in the appendix, and the Chief Executive of the Trust will take any questions, unless you've got anything to add to it, Willem. Yeah. Members? John?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just looking at the appendix here. I couldn't quite get my head round all the income that came in. You got total rental income, and then you got total service income and total of other service income. Could you give us an idea of what all that means, please?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the first thing to point out, you'll notice quite significant variance under line 8, and that's actually in relation to line 17 below. So we undertook some refurbishment work on behalf of Glasgow University in one of our buildings. So we spent money and then we recharged them for that money. So in terms of the other lines, you'll notice in line 2 the rental income, which is our core business, which is the rental of spaces and buildings. We've done better than we budgeted, and that's a significant. Our occupancy levels are just over 90%, and that's one of the reasons for that variance there. The total services income relates to effectively our other trading activity that isn't relating to rental income. So that's Nero's Bar and Restaurant, Easterbrook Hall, and then a few other kind of smaller elements which are not significant. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, any other members? Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. I suppose just to congratulate on your appointment as well to your new role as Chief Executive. I suppose, Chairman, I'll just kind of get things started, I suppose, in regards to some of the stuff's been touched on, the information that's contained within the appendix, but it's 2.2, I suppose. I'll maybe start there just as a get the conversation going. It refers to the due diligence being undertaken to enable a loan to detailed in paragraphs 3.2 and 3.3. The due diligence, when you look at the information contained within the appendix, I don't know for me if it just adds up when it comes to, depending on how much, there seems to be a kind of cross between this report and the next report, so in regards to what the 5 million might be getting spent on. It looks like it could be on possibly 5 buildings, but it could be other stuff as well. It could be on what's contained within the business plan clearly as well. So a wee bit unsure to what because we're looking at the £5 million of debt and 5 within the council's budget, potentially tapping into that as a loan. But then my question, due diligence, how does that get repaid? Because I see there's a 70% uplift when you look at the accounts in income from last year. So I don't know if that'll be the average. Will it go back down to what it was previously? So on the even on the level of surplus at this point in time, being just over £170,000, you just wonder if they do kind of due diligence has been undertaken, you do access a loan of £5 million. How many years would that be paid back? And just there's a whole load of questions here. So just to kind of get the conversation, get you to understand where I'm coming from, I think we need to be absolutely clear what we mean by that.
I'll ask Jan to come in first, because obviously the loan is part of the budget setting process, although not part of it, it was mentioned in the budget setting process for both budgets that came forward. But Jan, if you want to come back and get an understanding of where we are with that and where we go with regards to due diligence.
Thank you, Chair. The key element that we need for the due diligence is to actually understand the asset management plan that the Crichton Trust is putting together. That plan isn't quite complete at the moment. It will be phased. We have to understand the phasing so we can understand the additional income that they will gain to be able to repay the loan. So in order to do that, we need the asset management plan. We also need to understand their current loan facilities, because we already have a loan. They have a loan with the council and some other lenders, and based on that, that's the way that we'll calculate their ability to be able to repay the loan. Any loan facility that will occur based off the asset management strategy will have to go to full council for an agreement, or it will be the EEI committee for agreement. No, it won't be. It will be policy and resources. Sorry about that.
It'll be policy and resources. Gwilym, do you want to add anything to that?
I think only to add that any loan that we seek to draw down would be tied to additional revenue. So it's about repurposing and refurbishing property that currently is either not reaching the level of rental income that it could, or it's literally vacant property because it's certainly derelict at this point in time.
Okay, happening for you? Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the appendix, I mean, it is a very broad brush report, really, with quite lacking in detail. There's a couple of things that stand out, and just on the back of what you said earlier about the recharge. Well, if you look at line 8 and line 17 and just do a simple wee bit of arithmetic, that's £162,000 of the surplus. So that would bring it down to 13. So that's had quite a massive effect, and I take it that's not a recurring thing. I think that'll just be a one-off. Now, the borrowing charges or finance charges are up quite considerably, and that just brings further to my attention the fact that there's not any form of draft balance sheet or anything in this, detail and borrowings and things. Because when I see finance charges up, that would immediately make me think that levels of borrowing had risen. I can't actually see, and there's nothing here to give any clarity on that. So, is that the case?
I think we get the audited accounts later on in the year, Malcolm, so you get the full accounts later on, but I'll ask Gwilym to answer the rest.
Yes, it is the case. The level of borrowing is up. It relates to, I think it's Heston House loan, where we've taken out a loan to buy the lease, which is covered by additional income through rental. But you're quite right. This is very broad brush, and the kind of detailed auditing process is kind of underway at the moment, when we can provide you more detail on these accounts.
You want to come back in, Malcolm?
Yeah, thanks, Archie. Yeah, and that's fine. I understand that, and I'm not expecting an audited balance sheet, but it shouldn't be difficult just to provide a nice wee unaudited management account, because presumably you carry that out anyway. You'll be doing that every month, I would imagine, and it wouldn't have been impossible just to present it here, and it would have certainly given us a wee bit more information.
We can do that in future. We've presented this, I think, in a similar format that we have in the past, but I'm happy to provide the information that you require, so we can look at that. Yeah.
Okay, any other members? Okay, we're going to the recommendations. I'm not up for debate again. I'm going to the recommendations. All right, this is recommendations, yeah. Okay, Ian, what do you want?
I suppose, any questions for the cut off at that point? Is that what you're saying, Chairman? I mean, I do want to make a point in regards to it. It's more the recommendation, 2.2. If you're finished with questions at this moment in time, I would move on to that.
Well, if we go to 2.1 then, we're asked to note 2.1, the Crichton Trust Staff Management Accounts in detailed appendix, and 2.2, you want to...
Well, it's mere, we've been asked to note the due diligence, and I think because of the lack of information there, it talks about going to policy and resources, like you're saying. I think we maybe need to see it first. We need to see more detail in regards to that. There's been certain points, so we'd see it then, we send it to policy and resources after that. I think because there is a lack of information there, could ask a lot more questions in regards to some of those parts, but I think if we get a chance just to see it coming back here, then put it up to policy and resources after that.
The only thing I would check is timings, because obviously policy and resources might be before the next Crichton Sub Committee, might be after. If it is before, I'm sure we can get a look at that, but if it isn't, perhaps an email to understand what the due diligence actually is. Would that suffice, Ian?
Well, I suppose if we're agreeing that if it fits in with the timescales or the diary commitments that the committee's already scheduled in the council diary, it would have it back here first. And if it doesn't, what you're saying, we'll get some kind of briefing in regards to some of the points raised. There would actually be more, but I think it's if we didn't pick it up through this and have it clear as it goes forward to policy and resources, we'll just pick up at policy and resources, Chairman. Yeah, and that's the point. It's cleaner if it comes here first.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, the due diligence will be done at policy and resources anyway, the scrutiny of that particular thing. But if it's after, if it's before a Crichton subcommittee, then perhaps an action plan to brief members of what that actually is.
So just one small point, and Chairman, just so I'm being clear, and you've got a clear understanding of the rest of the committee has. If you looked at it, let's say a 70% uplift in income generation, now you're saying if borrow money potentially to increase the revenue income by refurbishing buildings, so on and so forth, well, even based on that 70% uplift, if the council gave an interest-free loan, you're talking 28 and a half years to repay back just at that, if we used all the surplus and not using that for anything else. So I think when it comes out, just a simple thing, there's other things we could be looking at. I think it's in support of those kind of things, Chairman. It might be safer to bring it back here first.
I'm sure that Finance Department will be, on their game with this particular thing. We have given loans in the past to that particular one. John?
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, Ian's made a good point there. I mean, it's okay bringing it to policy and resource, but I'm not a member of the committee, so this is my only chance to scrutinise this paper.
That's what I'm saying, John. If policy and resources is actually before, I mean, they've got to get the loan first, apply for the loan first to see what it's all about. That's done on the asset management. I'm sure, there'll be a subcommittee prior to a policy and resources prior to that. There will be, I'm agreed that. So quite happy for that to come forward to Crichton Sub at the next, prior to the P&R decision that has to be made here. Okay, are we happy with that? It's noted. Thank you. Okay, now going to the Crichton Trust report. Item number 4 is...
Just for clarity in a minute, obviously Councillor Carruthers was perhaps a bit over keen and giving apologies for Councillor Charter.
I was, he's came in, that's right. It was a different meeting. I was thinking, I apologise to John in advance. I give you apologies, John, that's right. So John's admitted. Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Oh well, I don't know about that, John. Yeah, okay. We'll move on to item number 4 then. This report gives members an overview of the various business activities the Trust has been involved with in over the period 5th of February 2018, 19th of June 2018. Details of these activities can be found in Section 3 of the report and Appendix 1 to the report, and the Chief Executive Trust will take any questions. Unless you've got anything to add, Willem? Members? Ian?
I think some of the points that we'd like to discuss, we'll discuss at a different time. It relates to the first report probably more so. So I'll just focus on maybe at this moment in time to get things started. 3.8 on page 7, it just refers to the Crichton Care Campus. I wonder, and it's mentioned within the appendix as well, I just wonder if we've got more. We've got appendix 2, just to elaborate on that, maybe site location, what size and scale. Being a member of the Health and Social Care Integrated Joint Board, maybe we've heard this on the periphery, but certainly it's a lot more detail there, but I'm very interested in this kind of stuff.
Willem?
Okay, so I can update members in relation to this. The kind of, I guess the key point to make is that we're in the middle of a research come consultation exercise around the concept of what makes an excellent place to grow old, which is funded through LEADER and a range of other partners. That piece of work needs to work through to completion, which is due to complete in September next year. We have just initiated a kind of parallel piece of work, which will begin to look at the thinking of how the concept of a care campus might manifest itself in a place. And we haven't identified exactly where that place might be in relation to the Crichton. But our plan is to develop a kind of high-level strategic brief, testing the kind of business case and what the options might be in terms of a site through to December time, which aligns with some of the public consultation work. So we're very early on this project, and it's a kind of 2-year phase of before actually we may be certain that this is the best model and the best way to move forward.
Come back in.
Please, Chairman. No, thanks very much for that. I'll just pick up, I think it's on page 7 again, and I'll note on there that you've got the team leader, local development plan and strategic housing manager for the Dumfries and Galloway Council as part of your team looking at. So I would imagine that with them two people in particular, being on that, you'll have a good idea of the need, the demand, and so on and so forth. And I also wondered if you've got any information in regards to that, what the demand is in Dumfries for a care campus like this, and will this affect the revenue we were speaking about earlier? Will this have a positive impact on a revenue income stream for the Crichton Trust itself?
Willem?
So in terms of the need, I don't have the figures with me, but there is a clear expressed need for additional kind of assisted living facilities, and looking ahead 10, 15 years, that need only grows significantly. In terms of revenue for the Crichton Trust, we see our involvement in this as being one of diversifying the potential kind of the range of people on the Crichton estate. We're thinking about individuals who may actually be actively involved economically in terms of working for businesses and involved in the education facilities. But we would see there would be some kind of a lease arrangement or some kind of arrangement with whoever the final developer is, and it might be a number of developers, depending on whether it's an individual assisted residential house or it's some kind of more intense support facility that is nearby. But as I stress, we're at kind of early stages in terms of consultation and development of this.
Okay.
I think you probably relate to this very well, Chairman, in regards to the stuff that's going on in Langham, but I know it's going wider than Andale and Estill, and further afield actually, much further afield now. And I just think that there probably will be, looking at this from the Crichton Trust point of view, a potential income stream, whether it's for NHS, whether it's for the council, and whether it's adult social care or health, doesn't really matter. I would imagine that would be an opportunity you should be looking at and keeping an eye on. Just to point it out, Chairman. Thank you.
Jan, did you want to come in on it?
Yes, just to say how much we support this, because we see this as innovation and we see this as an opportunity to do something different, but something that is groundbreaking. And it's good to see that that this project is a leader project, but it actually can be quite practical and practically applied in a Dumfries and Galloway method.
Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. It's actually 3.4 hospitality. I know I seem to keep talking about this all the time, but when you're losing £166,500 a year, I've suggested before that it was time that we had a bit of a major look into this. And again, we're very much light on detail here. We're reporting sales up in the restaurant, but there's no cost in it. Try to extrapolate it from Appendix 1 in the first part to see, and I can't square them up. I just have this thing that I think this isn't really your core business. It's costing you money all the time. And I think we need to get a more detailed report on the hospitality thing, because you can't afford to keep hemorrhaging money on this. And I know it says here it's your priority on the first 6 months in your post, and I think it is, and I would really like to see a bit more detail about this, because it's all very well having sales up, but if your costs are up by the same or more, then it's not really achieving very much. But I will say on a positive note, I was at the Chamber Business Awards on Friday night, and the meal was excellent. So it's it's not all bad, but in the end of the day, it's costed us a lot of money, or you a lot of money.
I think I'll just clarify a point on I think Councillor Davison mentioned it at the last subcommittee, that we're not here to run the Crichton Trust, we're here to scrutinise the audits and things like that, and perhaps give suggestions, as you say. Gwilym, I don't know if you want to answer that in particular.
Yeah, I think it's useful to, when we think about the hospitality, just to quickly separate it into its constituent elements, because some are cost more than others, and some are profitable. So there's kind of three key elements that are worth mentioning. That there's Nero's Bar, Spa and Restaurant, which has significantly improved over the last 6 months, and I'm confident that will be turning a profit within the next 6 months. So to put that into context, for April, the loss was just over £1,000 for Nero's Restaurant and Spa. And that's through a process of revitalising the menu, looking at consistency of service, and we've seen nearly a doubling of footfall year on year in the last couple of months in terms of Nero's. Easterbrook is a little bit more complicated in that it's a large building built for a certain use some time ago. There have been changes in particularly the wedding market in terms of scale of weddings, and we're kind of diversifying a little bit in terms of how we use the Crichton Memorial Church as a key wedding venue for smaller weddings, for the meal as well as the service. So that one of the key questions for Easterbrook Hall is that wider community use, and us looking at diversifying who might pay to use Easterbrook Hall. Conference market is something actually we're doing very well this year, so I'm hopeful that we're going to, those will be a significant improvement in the figures of the previous year by the end of this financial year. And the other small hospitality element we have is Frescoes, which is a small cafe bar area which turns a small profit on the estate.
Welcome.
Just on the back of what you said earlier, Chair, I mean, really, my point's not so much that I want to run Nero's or Easterbrook, because trust me, I don't. I just think for us to provide proper scrutiny, I think a bit more detailed information, which is basically the same point I was making on the first point.
And as I say, we do get a detailed audit of the accounts sometime. I think it's the next subcommittee we've actually got that, the detail of that. This is just an update on where they are at the moment. Jeff, did you want to come in?
Just a couple of points. One's just a sort of throwaway remark in terms of the hospitality, but I don't know to what extent the facilities up there are dog friendly, because I know an awful lot of pubs nowadays. So I think it is a way of bringing additional trade effectively. You know, you've got beautiful grounds up there. So if you're encouraging people to go up there to walk the dogs, then, you know, the logical thing would be to have a meal up there as well at the same time. And the other one is the care campus. I do think that's a really exciting proposition, and, you know, it's something which could transform older people's lives. I should probably declare a vested interest if we're looking 10 to 15 years in the future. But I do think it is something which could be major. Going around care homes with my mother, who's 94 but still living at home, but she's looking forward to she's not looking forward to the future, she's having to look to the future in terms of how long she can live independently. And, you know, there's a huge disparity in the quality of care you see in these homes. Some are very good, some are really awful. You know, there are sort of waiting spaces for heaven, effectively, if you're lucky. But to what extent are we investigating the DGRI campus as well? I know there's a lot of housing up there, which I assume the NHS board isn't using. It may not be suitable for older people to move into, but obviously we're going to have to employ staff in the new care campus. So is it possible to actually use that facility? I'm aware that in northwest Dumfries, we demolished an awful lot of accommodation there in order to build new accommodation. At the end of the day, in terms of phase 1 and 2 of the Northwest refurbishment, we didn't actually increase the accommodation in Northwest Dumfries by a single unit. So I think we need to think about what we can do with the accommodation we already have before we demolish it and start building something new.
Yeah. Your dog must be better trained than mine, I'll tell you that much, as if I should. Gwilym?
Okay, I can pick up 2 points. First of all, dogs are very welcome, and there's always water there sitting outside Neuro's for anyone who wants to visit with a four-legged friend. In regards to the Care Campus and other opportunities, I guess, within the Crichton Quarter, my understanding is the NHS is still kind of rationalising their thinking around their estate. There is also an express need for student accommodation, and there is the former nurses' accommodation on the hospital site. So there are some early conversations taking place around that.
Did you?
Just in terms of the dog-friendly, it doesn't actually show up. You do a search for dog-friendly facilities within Dumfries and Galloway. I don't think that shows up, so that might be worth looking at.
There's an advertising opportunity then. Yep. Any others? John?
Excuse me, Chair, I was just taking a drink of water there. Yeah, I'm looking at the Appendix 1 for the business plan. The estate water supply, at the moment, it's currently still with the NHS, and you're looking to take over this. Have you made any inquiries to see what the state of the water supply is and how much it would probably cost to upgrade it if there's anything in there?
Okay, so there's still ongoing conversations taking place between ourselves, the NHS, and the council in relation to the water supply. Our understanding is that as it currently stands, it's been well maintained. It's in good condition. It's clearly vital to us, to part of the hospital and a number of residential properties, not just on the Crichton estate, but there are other buildings. It's probably fair to say we're not sure actually which houses are connected and not. In terms of the future, there's been a piece of feasibility work done around connecting it to the mains, but we're now very much at the point of we're kind of waiting to see what the NHS's kind of thoughts are around the rationalisation of its property before we can kind of move forward. And I know that the NHS is very keen to get rid of that liability. We're not so keen to pick up that liability. It's probably not for us to pick it up, to be honest. So there's a number of negotiations to take place.
Thank you. Jane?
Thank you. Yes, I'm followed other members' thoughts about the way that your income stacks up, projected, and the percentages. And it's 50% is from property, as it stands at the moment. Given wider economy projections, they're not rosy, and I'm just wondering about your paragraph 3.3.4 at the bottom of page 5, concerning engaging with a partner to maximise on that income. I wonder if you could possibly expand on that, because while I recognise that the trust is actually about legacy buildings and they're important to Dumfries, that's why we've got actually, and so arguably we're not looking at directly only a commercial return. There is another aspect to the trust. Nevertheless, the trust can't be a one-trick pony, because we can't give out public money on the basis of something that will not stack up in the future. So I wonder if you could help me with 3.3.4 about what you're actually planning there.
Go on.
Yep, thank you. Okay, so I think there's a couple of elements just to, but the first thing, maybe it's useful for me to point out that a fair chunk of our other services income is directly related to the rental of property. So the percentage of our business that relies on the rental of property and occupation of buildings is significantly higher than 50%. Predominantly utilities, so all the electricity and water charges, telecoms comes through us, and then we recharge. So there's no tenant, but that obviously that income wouldn't be there. So looking forward, there's a real need for us to think about and this is at the heart of the development of a property strategy, is what the business needs for the region, for the south of Scotland, because we see ourselves as a kind of premier business park in the south of Scotland. What properties we need to develop, what properties we need to adapt to what those new needs might be, particularly in a kind of digital age and mobile workforces, and thinking about co-location of different businesses and individuals who work internationally but just need somewhere where they can connect with other people and beautiful landscape and things like a cafe. And although this might not core to our service, those elements on the site are important in terms of attracting businesses to our site. So it's part of our business model. Although I can't give you a kind of full answer, I totally understand and see the concern that we need to support that rental income into the future in order to effectively to maintain the heritage of the estate, which is basically our social enterprise business model. We rent spaces and keep our 27 historic buildings and the grounds around them in good upkeep.
Jan, you want to come in?
Just in addition to that, and to back up what Gwilym's been talking about, it is our premier business park. It's the largest one, and it is in the most stunning area. But when you're a business, you want to reduce your operational costs. So although they are wonderful buildings, they don't have low carbon heating. They are not up to the spec. Not all of them. Some of them are need to be up to the spec, so that they're energy efficient. So that is something that they will definitely need to look at. And then for themselves, they need to reduce their own operational costs, their heat, their power, and they have to be competitive. They have to be competitive with other places, other venues, to make certain that when they're putting a cost out, that price to the end user is value, but their margin is larger, so they're able to invest and service loans and pay staff and the like. So this is why the property strategy is absolutely vital. And if without that property strategy, the council's unable to do its due diligence so that it can supply with a loan. So that simply, that's the issue.
We'll come back, Jen.
I absolutely do, and I recognise what you're saying. So, I mean, really what I'm echoing, I think, probably is that that we need that level of detail and assurance and comfort. Exactly what Councillor Carruthers was talking about, to be sure that we can go forward, which I think we all want to, but we've got to be clear about what we're doing. It's a supplementary question. You're renting out some domestic properties, I think. And are you going to be caught up with the Scottish Government's requirement for efficiency? We're going to find ourselves with costs because these are old properties and might not necessarily meet the rental requirements of the Scottish Government. I know that other private landlords who are renting out old properties are finding this extremely challenging.
When you talk about the Scottish Homes Quality Standards,
in simple response to that is yes. So we're going to have to meet those new standards. Our properties have been well maintained, though, and I understand a number of them, and I don't have all the facts to my hands, but a number of them being re-insulated and double glazing has been installed. But inevitably there will be a cost there, but it's a cost that is obviously important to us in terms of moving towards a kind of a low carbon estate. The other, just if I may, just mention that we do have a lot of interest in our rental properties, business properties. There's an order book that we have that we regularly have people visiting. There's 2 or 3 new long-term tenants that are currently in the process of negotiating final leases on. So it feels like quite a positive, buoyant market at present in that regard. And then the other thing key point to mention relating to the property strategy is how we sit within the Crichton Quarter and the development of the Ladyfield site and the potential development of the hospital site in Crichton Hall. And should those areas move ahead, that will have a significant positive impact as well, I think, for the kind of future of the Crichton as a whole.
Thank you. John?
Oh, thank you. When we were talking about the water supply, I was surprised that no mention was made of Scottish Water. We were talking about the council taking it over and the Crichton Trust being responsible for this water supply. I mean, the people who supply water in Scotland are Scottish Water, and they've already laid a brand new mains all the way down the road there, completely. They put that in when the new part of the hospital was there. And it just seems to me there's a modern water supply there. Why are we still doing with artesian wells and pumps and reservoirs and all the other things that are that infrastructure? I think we should go back to the Scottish Government and say to them, their Scottish Water business needs to take over this bit. They supply water everywhere else in Dumfries and Galloway. Why can't they supply the Crichton?
Well, I think that was part of the discussion that was ongoing with the Crichton Trust, National Health and the organisation, but I'll ask Willem to...
Indeed, there have been conversations with Scottish Water, and part of the feasibility work that's been done has been with them. As I understand it, they've indicated that there is a new water main. I think their preference is connecting effectively the current header tank that's up on the hill to that, and using that to feed the Crichton estate as a potential way forward. There is a question about the rest of the infrastructure on the estate. At what point Scottish Water has responsibility, whether it's to the door of individual businesses, or is it to the gate of the estate, or is it up on top of the hill where the well is? And that's all part of the discussions of how we move forward.
Well, all I know, we were talking about the same thing 10 years ago. I mean, exactly the same answer was given 10 years ago. And the answer is to get Scottish Water and the Scottish Government on board. They put the new pipeline in. You could do away with the pumps. You could do away with the artesian well. You could do away with the storage at the top of the hill, because there's a great pipe bringing Scottish Water along the road. I mean, it seems it just not mentioned Scottish Water. That's what interests me, and they're the right ones. That's what the business they're in.
I think that's what Gilliam was actually saying, is the infrastructure on the site, for instance, when you go onto the site, the pipe work, etc. The discussion is, who does it actually belong to and who's responsible for maintaining it? That's the discussion that they're actually going ahead with, John. And I think that's well and truly taken on board, that the discussions are on board as to where Scottish Water's responsibility lies within the site and out with the site, but also where the Trust and the NHS responsibilities lie as well. We've also got an artesian well there, which may be actually a benefit. So there is a potential for that as well. Rob?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I wanted to ask about the Crichton Memorial Church on page 13. So the 1.5 million phase 1 repairs are complete. I wondered if we could refresh my memory on what those were. And also the development of the crypt and the Undercroft, clearly that had been the plan as visitor interpretation centre. Where does that sit now? Is that like looking at progressing, or is that going to be revisited in line with the things you're talking about in terms of the church being a venue for, I guess, other things, smaller weddings, etc. And also the 1.5 million pounds, was that, whose was that, basically?
Well,
okay, so the first thing I said, within that project, some emergency work was done on Memorial Church in terms of the roof, and improvements were made. The larger capital project was about making opening up the crypt and making it accessible. And that was quite a large scheme that was costed. The 1.5 million figure relates to the cost that was identified for that piece of work. That the monies to pay for it wasn't fully identified, but it's an aspiration within our business plan to redevelop that space. As part of our property strategy and some discussions that I've been having internally, we're just looking at whether we can phase the work in the crypt, because one of the priorities for Crichton Memorial Church is for the provision of some toilets and a lift, which would greatly enhance the offer that we have and potentially the income we can generate from the use of that venue. So that's something we're currently revisiting. We've asked the architects who did the original drawings for the complete refurbishment of the crypt and the provision of toilets and a kind of basically a function area to see if we can scale that back so we can move ahead on one element of it a little bit quicker. So I'd stress, though, those kind of investment decisions are directly linked to, can we generate additional income out of the asset, which is, again, our kind of social enterprise business model. At the moment, we hire toilets regularly for functions that take place in the church and sit them outside, and there's costs involved there. And there's definitely opportunity, I think, for us to enhance that particular building and that offer.
Ian, did you want to come back in?
I did, if that's okay. It was actually piggyback on Councillor Maitland's question earlier in regards to partners. At 3.3.4, I think it is. Yep. I just wonder, how do you communicate, engage, consult, contact any partners, organisations as you go forward? Do you even do joint ventures? Just out of interest, because it's something I didn't really see. I've noticed, and it's how will you do it rather than how do you have you done it in the past? Because you're brand new into this, obviously, Willem, and it's just so from your vision, your point of view, how will you engage new partners? Because there could be quite a number of opportunities actually when you see on this site. So how will you go about that?
Okay, so I'm a great fan of partnership and collaboration, having kind of networked approach to solving any kind of problem that might be there. And I think, and over the last 8 weeks, I've met nearly 50 individuals who are potential partners or collaborators, from individually run someone who Let's Get Sporty, social enterprise that provides outdoor sports-related activities, and we're looking at how we can work with them in terms of animating and enhancing activity on the estate. So I think it's simple. The simple answer is it's about identifying individuals who have an interest and a passion in the Crichton, who can see benefit from working with us, and if that's mutual, then that's absolutely a positive way forward. And I think we can be far greater than the sum of our parts by working with as many people as possible. And that links into the Crichton Quarter and also to the wider geographic area of the town centre, and thinking about our relationship with the town centre and then Dumfries and Galloway and south of Scotland and beyond.
Yes, and Jane?
Thank you. I'm just going back to the Crichton Memorial Church. It's just that I remember there was a council grant, and I just want to be absolutely clear that has now been spent, because there was delay, quite a long delay, and that money sat around for a bit. I just want to be sure that council grant was spent appropriately on the Crichton Church as was expected.
I'm not going to ask when, Jane, but
Okay, I have to confess, obviously this is before my time, so I'd need to go back and just check the detail behind that.
I wonder if it'd be appropriate to maybe email myself, and I'll pass it out to all members. Yeah. John?
Thank you, Chairman. Going back to page 13, the Victorian greenhouses and gardens, there's a 1.5 million estimate. Will you be seeking funding from the likes of Heritage Scotland, etc., etc.? Because it's my understanding that it's a listed building.
This is where the veterans have actually moved into, John, and I have to say that obviously they're now a charity. They did come under the first base charity in Dumfries, and they've now become a charity within their own right. So they will be applying for funding like from the Community Covenant Grant Scheme and things like that. But Jan will give an update on that.
Yes, we're combining this as part of a regeneration capital grant, but you need to be able to bring in other funding as well. Actually, the cost is 2.5 million, but £1 million of that is in labour, which will be coming from the veterans. So That is a huge amount of in-kind. The trust has a very detailed plan on what needs to be done, and that's made it quite easy for us to put in a joint, more strategic regeneration capital grid grant fund bid.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because part of the business plan for the charity actually being organised was looking at bringing the listed buildings back into use. I'll give you, for instance, John, the wood at the moment is made with teak. It's well shot. There's been a lot of sort of jungle, for want of a better word, growing through it, so therefore working with the Heritage Building Officer of the Council, the only alternative is oak, so you can imagine the price that's going to be, but it does actually bring the price down compared to teak, so there is things that we're actually doing, working with the Crichton Trust and the veterans to try and save money for that particular thing.
I'd just like to say, Chair, that I think it's a fantastic thing, and especially for ex-servicemen, being involved, and I think it's brilliant.
Just a supplementary to that, and John, 3 weeks ago we were sitting in the porter cabin that's here, and a gentleman came up who was 6'9", had a sore neck by the end of the time we actually finished speaking to him, and his family had been involved with the forces all his life, and handed a cheque for £10,000 to the charity, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. And there have been people coming in and out all the time, locals who have been handing small cheques for £25, or for trust for vouchers for the garden centres for 125 quid, and the garden centre said, I'll add 15 quid on, and all that sort of stuff. So it's been really positive, actually being the veterans actually being there, because they're now closer to the town rather as Crichton, which is quite a journey away, and we're actually seeing benefit that more and more veterans are actually asking to come to the garden with their and with the mental health nurse that we've got up there in the Crichton anyway. He's got less journeying to do and all, so we get a wee bit longer time. Well, okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to the recommendations then. Recommendation, we review and comment on the work of the Crichton Trust. I think we've done that. And 2.2 is to note progress on the implementation of immediate priority projects contained within the business plan in Appendix 1. Is that noted? Well, thank you very much, members, and Willem and Ian. I hope it's a very successful next few months for you. I've got no further business, and I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I suddenly had my aeroplane delayed.
I thought you were going to.
I was going to be away this morning.
I thought that you were going
So I came back in to do the.
I thought I got mixed up then.
No, you hadn't. You were absolutely right. I didn't have time. I got a delayed aeroplane.